Welcome to another live stream. It's our time to get together and talk about gang stalking. Hopefully, you guys are having a good weekend. And as usual, I don't schedule these, so hopefully, we'll get a couple people in, including some of our moderators. We had a real good crowd last night. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. Sensitization and gaslighting are at the foundations of gang stalking. And, we talk a lot about all the methods and the themes and the techniques and all those things that are used against targeted individuals. And a lot of people often mention or ask me the question, I guess, is why are they doing this stuff? Why are people gang stalking me? And there's a lot of different reasons. When you really get into it, that's a big question, right? And it can be different for each and every targeted individual on a personal basis. It doesn't mean that they're not dealing with similar circumstances or that the themes can't carry over. They are, because you're dealing with a mechanism. But there's different motives and there's different things going on. It does fit a type of template, and I've talked about that when you get into different things that a lot of targets, will deal with, including experimentation, things like MK Ultra or other sub-programs and things like that, silencing whistleblowers, or you get into the occult, and you have different agendas that go into obfuscating the existence of spiritual harassment, of things that are demonic, and so on and so forth, and moving into the psychiatric agenda. And then you got all kinds of things that are even political and ideological, and you have basically everyone being subjected to a form of sensitization and gaslighting, not just the targets that are out there, right? I've talked about that before. When you look at MK Ultra, you see different methods that are just used on everybody, but it's not as intense. In the MK Ultra experiments, you had people being covertly drugged, subjected to disturbing and violent material. There's psychic driving. You had the things that are, involved in V2K, different kinds of experiments involving deprivation. Of course, targeted individuals experience a lot of deprivation. But when you look at what was happening in society around the same time, people were being subjected to that stuff in mass, whether it was LSD, going out to the masses right around the same time. And then you had the infiltration into Hollywood, and you had people being exposed, like I said, on a less intense level to violent sexual material, propaganda, so on and so forth. And of course, the media is controlled and owned, and you have, a lot of repetition. When you get to the psychic driving that was used in MK Ultra, those things are repetitious. And targeted individuals deal with those repetitions. They're juggled around, and sometimes they're mixed up in a way where they become more covert, or there's different themes involved, or different techniques. Targets might be dealing with noise campaigns and workplace harassment. Then it might switch over to different forms of directed conversations. Their stalking may change. They might, not be experiencing the obvious surveillance anymore, but they're being infiltrated by honeypots, and the gaslighting goes up to the point where it just becomes more psychological, and then it can flip back and forth from these different things. But the motives can vary. Okay, and like I said, some people are being experimented on. Sometimes you're dealing with people who just want to control you. Sometimes you're dealing with a spiritual agenda that involves psychiatry and obfuscating the spiritual dimension. Or are you just creating lateral comparisons and vessels of wrath for deterrence? I've talked about the secret societies and so forth. When you have people involved in fraternities, or people who know about gang stalking, and there are a lot of people who do, and they know about different conspiracies, and they know about the hierarchy that is in this world. I've talked about that before. What's to stop them from just starting to blab about these things and just spill the beans, right? Well, there's a level of deterrence involved in that, whether it's the government or some other thing. And it is used for that And I'm wondering if anybody's out there. It looks like we only have one person, and I don't think all the targets are out there. Well, thanks for coming in, Heidi. Can you hear me? Is everything working correctly? Give me a little shout out there, if you will, and then I'll know that at least you guys can hear me right now. Any response? Okay, well, I'll wait for that, and I'll just keep talking. It looks a little suspicious that there's only one person on the live stream right now. Okay, it sounds great. Thanks, Heidi. I appreciate the feedback. Well, nothing else. It's just going to be me and you hanging out tonight. And that's fine with me because I know a lot of people listen to this stuff later. And it's kind of my fault anyway because I don't schedule these things. I've been looking into the Trump assassination attempt even more, of course. For people out there who are tired of hearing about it, this does play into gangstalking in a lot of different ways. Okay, it does, and there's a lot of things that should be in that scenario, and there's a lot of things that are just very confusing. And I just kind of want to touch on it a little bit because it's classic. I mean, there's so many different issues that targets deal with. They get harassed in a lot of different ways. They're dealing with the blackballing, the defamation of their character, their character assassination. They're having a hard time finding proper employment. They're dealing with all those things, and they're dealing with gaslighting and people in their family, the honeypot. All these, it seems like everybody turns against them, and inevitably they start to wonder what the hell is really going on. And if it goes on long enough, sometimes they can start wondering if any of this stuff is even real. Okay, and why? And it's not really funny. I'm not laughing about it, but it happens to me. It happens to all targets, and it's a reality flip, and it's just one of those things that you have to confront as the world around you turns into the twilight zone as a targeted individual. But this whole thing with Trump and the assassination attempt up in Pennsylvania is it's mind-blowing. It's just another facet to this strange menagerie that you're dealing with in your reality as a targeted individual. Because think about it. You go out as a target, you're maybe going to the grocery store or whatever, and it's like all of a sudden people know your business, right? There's all these people everywhere that seem to know, and it's not that people are reading into it, and people who are coming in and watching this video who've never experienced gang stalking, who are unaware of the real hierarchy or the secret societies, the reality of those things, that it's not just a conspiracy theory, the reality of demons, the reality of the inevitable judgment, and what we're really doing here, where we came from, and where we really are as human beings on this planet, surrounded by different dimensions and stuff like that. I mean, it gets pretty wild. But you're not thinking about any of those things. You're moving through the landscape of this world, and everything seems normal. And then the next thing you know, you're dealing with a bunch of weird stuff, and it's easy for targets to go into a psychosis or start to derealize, or wonder if they're in a simulation, or wonder if they're on the Truman Show, and things like this. Everybody's getting a little taste of it now. There's a lot of things just in the science of what happened, and as far as the inconsistencies concerning the information of this assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the shooter location, for some reason they can't get that figured out. We saw pictures of it. Okay, there's pictures out there of the body and so on and so forth, but there's different logistical things as far as the trajectory science. Now they're looking at different audio analysis of how far the shot was, so on and so forth. And they've got schematics drawn up where the shooter was supposedly closer to an open window on the second building, where evidently there was, I think, supposedly a counter sniper team or something like that over there, which the window was open. So the suspicious thing about that is we obviously know the shooter was further, about 60 foot over to the other side. And the trajectory science, when Donald Trump turned his head over to the teleprompter, is really the only reason that bullet missed him. I mean, it's a miracle, but the trajectory doesn't line up. But according to the stuff that I was looking at, not only that, but you have supposedly different discrepancies in the algebra concerning how far away all the shots were. Okay, and then you got people disputing the acoustics and so on and so forth. But you should have a pretty consistent, uh, you know, I don't know, the format in that, in the sense that the same microphone is going to give similar effects, and it's not really a cacophony as a lot of people are saying, but it's just not lining up. Okay, the location of the shooter, that's in question. Okay, the audio that you're dealing with, the kid is walking around with a rangefinder. Okay, what screams what screams false flag, guys? What are the usual signs of a false flag? Right, obvious security failures. Right, the Trump security was given the day off, so he had to get those replacements in there, which there was a competent team in that area, but they were sent over to one of Biden's fundraisers on that day. That's another coincidence. I mean, there's just so many things going on. He fits the profile of a patsy, which when you get into targeted individuals, that really plays into the things that you're dealing with as a target individual. We talked about experimentation. We've talked about the mass shootings, stuff like that before. You have the Manchurian Candidate kind of thing going on, and of course that was part of the MK Ultra program. But the classic patsy fits this completely. You guy's a loner. Supposedly he was being bullied or whatever. Another interesting fact about Thomas was that he failed I guess he was trying to get on some type of marksman team at his high school, and he couldn't even get on that. He was such a bad shot that I guess he failed that whole thing. Probably the most suspicious aspect of this whole thing, for me at least at this point, is not the security failure is epic. Okay, it's just like 9/11, right? Not, oh, by the way, the guy that that whispered in Bush's ear. You remember the classic, video bite where he's in school that day and the guy comes up. He was there. He was at the Pennsylvania. I'm not going to mention anybody's name. He was there that day, which gives a lot of people ammunition that this is some type of deep state hit on Donald Trump. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying a lot of people are looking at that as a little suspicious. There's a clear message: when you mess with the deep state, you'll be publicly annihilated. But he has no social media profile at all. A kid, right, that mysteriously has 3 secured crypto accounts, and that's it. No social media, nothing. And suspiciously, it was in a BlackRock video 2 years before that, right in the main shot, which they, of course, erased. And, you guys all know who BlackRock is. They basically own the world, the largest asset manager in the history of mankind, I do believe. You got a lot of things going on. You've got the failed security. He's walking around with a rangefinder. He gets up on the roof. Supposedly he's got these detonators and all this other stuff. He took the day off from work. So some people would say, well, why would he, if he's just going to go die? Why would he bother to take the day off from work unless he thought he was going to, come back and want to get his job, right? And then he said to some people that this was the beginning of his career. So a lot of people are throwing around the hypothetical idea that this kid maybe thought that, he was, I don't know, doing something, for the government rather than trying to kill Donald Trump. I don't know. I have no idea. But the whole idea that they're failing on all these things, very suspicious. And, the patsy or the Manchurian Candidate theory comes into play. And it's mind-boggling. It doesn't seem possible. There's no explanation for these obvious blunders. And it's one of those things, like I said, when I started this, it doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem real. It's just another strange facet to the life of a target individual. There's a lot of people out there in the world that are, shaking their head, they're scratching their head, but for a target, who's dealing with all these weird things where people are, playing, games with them, stalling tactics, food tampering, breaking into their house, doing the directed conversations. And it's like everything is just creepy for targets. So I thought that you got to laugh a little bit. But it is, just another aspect of this surreal existence as a targeted individual. And so, anyway, we've often talked about different themes and techniques that are used against targeted individuals, and some of the most demoralizing and confusing are the techniques of sensitization, and the gaslighting is basically foundational to gang stalking. Whether you're being discredited, whether you are being taken into a place of dysfunction, and you're convinced that you deserve this, or somehow you're in some type of I don't know, behavioral modification program, right? A lot of targets will talk about that. They just want me to quit isolating. I was talking to one guy who gets gang stalked, and it's probably the only person in this area that I've talked to about that. And his theory is that somebody had involved him in a type of, I don't know, circle that involves methamphetamines, and the cops were looking at him, took notice of him, and somehow these people became involved, possibly some people in his family, and now they're just kind of watching out for him, making sure he doesn't isolate or start doing drugs again, and just happened to follow him, through a 1,000-mile, trek to, from here to another place I'm not going to mention. And, you see that. You see targets trying to come up with reasons why all these things are happening. Like I said at the beginning of the video, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? And then you have the logistical dilemma of all the resources being used. If you're going to put this into, or try to shoehorn it into some type of government-only scenario, especially if you're one of those targets who've been dealing with it on an extended basis, how much money are they putting into it, right? And not only that, what are they getting out of it, right? Which sometimes that happens. But I think a lot of people are dealing with, more of a spiritual scenario. And I think that, when you look at the infrastructure and look at it properly, you'll be able to explain this stuff logistically without having the government spending, tens of thousands of dollars a week, or, hundreds of thousands of dollars to watch you and to track you and to, chase you around the United States, wherever you're going, just to freak you out at the 7-Eleven, which, a lot of targets are dealing with stuff like that, where they'll get directed conversations. Who is really around you anyway, right? Who are your friends? Who are these people that are surrounding you that are doing this stuff? And, where are you? Because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, all of a sudden the target is going to experience a change in their environment, right? And, how do you explain it? Because if you're going to go on the conscious collusion, which sometimes targets are dealing with that, people are literally getting paid, or they're spreading rumors about you or whatever. And, who's behind this whole thing? And then targets, of course, they're trying to struggle to survive or maintain employment or whatever. And they have a lot of people who are criticizing them or looking down on them, and it just feeds that sense of injustice. And one of the techniques in provoking target individuals is to make light of those things, or if nothing else, put them in a place where they experience that tyranny and deprivation. And of course, the frustration mounts, they can provoke you. But, when asked why you are at the center of this, interstellar conspiracy involving multiple geographical locations, the people in your social circles, workplace, family, community, there's only so many plausible answers. And for targeted individuals, it becomes a pretty big dilemma. So, when you're looking at the sensitization, when you're looking at the gaslighting, that goes into it, okay? Because the sensitization allows for the plausible deniability that is used around the target to create that menagerie of obfuscation of the illegal activity. Not only that, but to use that as a type of secret communication with the target, and basically using covert techniques to get them into a place where they can attack them in crowds of people or around people who don't know anything about gang stalking, and no one will notice but the target. Okay. Hijacking their physiological and psychological mechanisms or instinctual survival mechanisms and turning it against the target to invade their psyche using trauma mind control. Okay. And, the thing that I was talking about before, as far as people getting to the point where they believe these people are trying to help them or whatever, they get that Stockholm effect, right? Where for them, it's a whole lot easier to kind of latch on to some of the things that are happening to them as far as the disinformation throughout this campaign of terror that they're experiencing, because it's just too hard to believe that the world is this crazy and that people are that evil and that the people around them that they loved and trusted, whether it's their family, friends, coworkers, community, or whatever, are really, just out to get them, or they are being influenced demonically or whatever. And it's easy. It's just easier for the target to accept that stuff. And it just feeds into that gaslighting menagerie. And I've talked about that before. They will switch the techniques on the target, depending on their reaction to the environmental stimuli and the environmental tyranny that is used to get them in that place where they generate the emotional currency and the emotional psychological paradigm that they want them to adopt. Right. The environmental tyranny is not without its motive. Okay. So breaking down the target, getting them in a place of flight or fight, and incorporating those different techniques involved in sensitization is very important. Okay. It's used as a way to get that target in a place of anticipating the attack and looking around and processing information in a personal way, so that it just becomes that much easier to attack them. Okay, I've talked about the targeted individual, paranoia, the warranted suspicion, the methodology that creates that paranoia that the target is dealing with, and of course, when people when they are attacked with all these methods, whether it's the direct conversations, the different forms of harassment in their community, they're given the personal information to get their attention. They might be dealing with the aggressive tactics. I've talked about that before. They'll deal with subtle hints. Then they'll move up into more hostile methods, and then the directed conversations and the break-ins. It's beyond that, because they've already been threatened and they've already been taken into a place of hypervigilance. And once they are in that place of hypervigilance, then their mind is already being invaded. Then comes the different techniques. Okay, so first they're probably just wondering what the hell is the problem. Why are these people angry? Have I offended someone? Is it a game? What is actually going on? And then of course you get the threats and you get the hostile looks, and people are scowling or they're smirking or being smart asses, and they know personal things about the target, and you start getting the idea that you're being hunted down. Then it becomes more aggressive and more hostile, and then it's even scary. And then you get into the different techniques that are, a complete invasion into the target, to where they are just completely traumatized, running for their life. But in the midst of that, you have different things. You have themes, colors, words, phrases, and so on and so forth. People talk about whistling or different sign language or symbology or whatever is used to incorporate into that theme will be used against the target, and that's the sensitization process. And of course, then you have the disinformation and a lot of speculation out there in the targeted individual community that moves that person in, through that environmental tyranny to create that emotional currency for manipulation, to create the paradigm, and then move them into propositional tyranny. And what I mean by that is they start believing things that are not true, or they move into a place of temporary psychosis, or they'll move into a place where they are, just easier to gaslight, whether it's the, Stockholm syndrome, that these people are trying to help them or correct them, or they have the right to do it, right? And sometimes people are surrounded. Sometimes it's individuals that are in their family or in their immediate social circle. And unfortunately, as the dysfunction mounts for targeted individuals, they become more dependent on other people. That's part of the strategy. So at the same time, they're trying to drive you away and isolate you, because that's part of the discrediting process of the target individual, and to fit them into that place. As I mentioned with Thomas Crook, that he's the classic Manchurian candidate. He's the loner, right? He didn't have a social media profile. There's just too many things that are missing, but there's too many things that fit. He's dead. He's the silent attacker now because he's gone. We don't know what's going on. Similar to Mandalay Bay and other things, the 9/11 attackers. They're dead now. We don't know. It's a mystery. No manifesto. There's just too many things that are convenient. But for the targeted individual, they are used for some of those things. But the main strategy is to infiltrate their mind and sensitize them and get them ready for the gaslighting, which of course involves that type of propositional tyranny. I've heard targets, kind of repeat certain things that I don't think are being done to them. For example, I've talked about the whole accident scene theory. A lot of targets will say, well, I came across the accident. I know they set it up for me. I don't believe that. Okay. I think that's one of those things that is just out there, man. I don't believe the people in your community, the fire department, or, the first responders are setting up accident scenes for you. But, that's the least of your worries as a targeted individual. All the other stuff is just as logistically impossible, as far as people knowing your business, or, possibly reading your mind, or, knowing where you're going to go when the target goes on the run, or, dealing with things where it seems like cameras are already placed in hotel rooms or apartments as the target runs around and tries to secure a location, whatever. All those things are just as logistically impossible. But of course, you're involving the spiritual dimension, which is, you're dealing with things that are not really necessarily clairvoyant, but, dimensional perspectives outside of, space, time, or other information involving time dilation, or however you're going to look at that, targets deal with that kind of thing. I've talked about, some of the tyranny that targets will deal with. And it freaks them out to the point where they're afraid to be in public. They become agoraphobic. The just taking care of regular things like going to their appointments, or going to the grocery store, or getting to work or whatever. It becomes too much for them to deal with, because it seems like they're always one step ahead of the target. And I think they are. When not everybody is dealing with that heavy, high harassment that involves the spiritual dimension. But I think a lot of targets are, and I think some targets are actually mistaking some type of government program for something that's just purely demonic. And then there's always the unfortunates out there who are literally dealing with every aspect of that. They are literally dealing with the full meal deal. Okay, they're getting pushed from every direction. They are dealing with things that could be possibly involving implants, technology, V2K, demonic stuff, people influenced by demons, individuals that are involved in secret societies and the occult, and other things that make them vulnerable, in the sense that they are in the proximity of the influence of spiritual beings. And it's not that, like I've talked about this before, it's not like the Freemasons are sitting around plotting against you at the local lodge where you live. But guess what? Because they are involved in that, because people are involved in the occult, because people are involved in things that they're not supposed to be involved in, or drugs or whatever, or they are not in a relationship with Jesus Christ, they're going to be used. And they can be accessed by these spiritual entities to attack you. And it doesn't even have to involve money, the CIA or the DOD or whatever. Okay, no MK Ultra involved, but sometimes that amalgamates together, and you have targets out there who are dealing with all that stuff. I believe that can happen. But when you get into that place of propositional tyranny, that's when the gaslighting begins. Okay. And there's so many levels to that tyranny. When targets feel like they're on the Truman Show, they're getting the directed conversations. People seem to know what they're doing. And it gets to the place, the invasion of their psyche is so intense that they don't even know when they're being observed. They don't even know if they have any privacy at all. They're showering in the dark. They're sitting in their house. They're looking out the windows. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid to think. and it gets to the place where they start to criticize themselves, and then you move out of that propositional tyranny into the place where you're your own handler, right? And you start buying into that disinformation and manufactured justification that comes from the perps that are around you, the gang stalkers around you who are attacking you, and getting in your head. Okay, and then you start criticizing yourself, and you move further into that downward spiral of dysfunction, which takes targeted individuals into a state of manufactured schizophrenia or mental illness. And I've had a lot of criticism by people. Oh, well, look at that person; it's obviously crazy. What do you mean they're a target individual? Well, okay, so they're wrong about a few things. Okay, maybe they're wrong that these accident scenes are being set up for. Like, I could see them making that mistake, or maybe they are wrong about the helicopters that they think are after them, or maybe that is somebody in the neighborhood where they live flying a drone around, and it has nothing to do with them. But you don't know what else they're dealing with. You don't know the things that they are dealing with: the sleep deprivation, the covert drugging, the assault on their mind, the forms of gaslighting, the workplace harassment that they are dealing with, the V2K or the demonic harassment. And just because they get into a place of dysfunction and they become mentally ill from harassment, which is basically what gang stalking is, it's manufactured mental illness, doesn't mean they're crazy. Okay? It doesn't mean that they are not a targeted individual. It just means that a lot of this stuff is probably taking them in the era of dysfunction. Okay? And so that's one of the biggest dilemmas for targeted individuals. And that's also where that dangerous gaslighting comes in, because the illegal activity is obfuscated in a way where people are not, they have lost their credibility. They have lost their credibility, and it's like that serial killer that takes you out in the middle of the country and says, go ahead, scream all you want, because nobody is going to hear you. Nobody believes you, and nobody will come to your rescue, because now you've been painted as crazy. You've been taken to the psych center, or all your family members don't believe you. You've been talking about all this stuff, and now we can just get away with whatever we want, right? And if I've seen people before that believe they're crazy. They literally, the whole thing is so strange, and there's so many voices coming at them, telling them that this is not possible. They're hallucinating, and they're dealing with this, form of mental illness. They believe it. Okay. You don't have a whole lot of support out there. That's one of the reasons I make these videos. It's one of the blessings of the online targeted individual community that we can come together and have affirmation. And the whole idea of that type of Stockholm effect and the possibilities of gaslighting a targeted individual who's experienced covert drugging, social isolation, many different forms of deprivation, that they're getting drugged, all that stuff. It's classic. It's like a cult leader. It's like Jonestown. They kept people working and busy, and they set the standard so high that people were not sleeping. They were not eating properly. You will slowly deteriorate, and you will become vulnerable to that type of mind control. It's really that simple. And when that happens, along with the reality flip that targeted individuals deal with, and the lack of support and the deprivation and the much needed interactions that we all need. It's like that deprivation chamber that was in the MK Ultra experiments. It was one of the worst aspects of that. Your brain needs stimuli. Just the simple act of having a conversation with someone at work that's normal generates endorphins and chemicals in your brain. Okay, you need that. It makes people very vulnerable to substance abuse and other addictions. I've talked about that. A lot of that will play in to the landscape of the targeted individual, and that just discredits them further. There's many targets who are already being driven crazy, and of course they're experiencing that deprivation, and just to feel happy, just to numb the pain, just to get into a place where they can have some control, they will reach for a substance or some other type of addiction to supplement that lack of endorphin release, or for pleasure or whatever in their life, because they don't have the normal outlets. They do not have anyone to talk to. And when they get in that place where they're vulnerable and that propositional tyranny begins to close in on them. The gaslighting is so intense they can believe they're crazy, right? It's similar to what happens when you have the sweat lodge experience. Okay, it's more incremental. I've talked about the death of 1,000 cuts that targeted individuals deal with. You don't eat, you don't sleep, you're isolated. You're basically driven crazy into a place where you're almost having a religious experience, and then all of a sudden these people will come in and, oh, no, you're having symptoms of schizophrenia, and this whole thing is just you're having a delusion. It's similar to the movie Total Recall, right? Where Schwarzenegger, Quaid is just sitting there, and the guy comes in, he's like, no, I'm not even real. I'm just a figment of your imagination. I've been sent into your little program here, and I want to rescue you because you're going to have a schizoid embolism, and you're never going to come back. And he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what's real anymore. Okay, that's the thing that targets are taken to. That's the place where that gaslighting becomes intense. And of course, the perps are going to switch that up, and they're going to change the environmental stimuli. And of course, as soon as you give into that, well, they're going to change the harassment and change the salient landscape of the target individual. And it feels good. Oh gosh, it seems to stop. Well, no, it's the medication, Billy. You just needed some meds. Okay, we're here to help you. We love you. We would never do that. How could you think the world is so crazy? Just take your meds, Billy. And then of course it's going to flip on and off. And I've seen it happen. And they've tried to do it to me. Okay, I've seen it, many, many, many times. And sometimes rather than trying to get the target to convince them that they are mentally ill, sometimes it requires more activity to just break them down and get an emotional response, right? And make in other words, if you can't convince the target that they're crazy, just let everybody else around them believe they are, right? Eventually, maybe they just want to kill you or whatever, and some targets deal with that. If nothing else, you get them to react. That classic narcissist technique where you turn the stimuli on and off. You use the faucet technique. You take them through that emotional and psychological roller coaster enough times, they finally just freak out. They get angry or whatever. And if it's around a bunch of people who've been prepped and indoctrinated with this whole methodology of the people on the outside of the equation, we're just worried. We're worried about little Sally. We don't know what's wrong with her. She's scaring us. She's isolating. And of course, nobody knows. And then, the individual overreacts supposedly to all the stimuli that's going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about. And if nothing else, you could just, convince everybody around the target they're crazy and possibly get them into a more compromised position where you could take away their freedom, have them sent in for evaluation, or maybe to spend, a good week or two vacation in the local psych center or a crisis center somewhere in their state, which inevitably might involve some other activity that could be there. I've talked about that before. You get some real interesting people who get jobs in those places. Really, it's not that I'm presenting a dilemma that is impossible or unexplainable, because if you use the proper landscape, if you see what they're trying to do, if you realize that you do still have power as a target and individual and that you don't have to react, you can see their motive and you can cry out to God and he will help you and work these things out for you, not necessarily stop them, not, remedy it in a way where, these people are just immediately brought to light or justice, but literally in a confident, calculating manner that he will literally use the things that they are doing for your benefit. Okay. Because, the whole thing just seems insurmountable. And I've mentioned before that there are a lot of targets who do get put into that place where they start wondering what's real, right? Like I said earlier, you have so many things going on as a target, and then you've got things in the news that just, they don't add up. It just feeds in to the surreal atmosphere that you are thrust into. And, I've mentioned this before too, that when you get obvious harassment or you deal with things that everybody, because everybody's dealing with this weird, surreal Trump assassination attempt. It's not just targets. This is not something isolated to you. Finally, the people around you are seeing something ain't adding up here. This doesn't even seem possible. What do you mean some dude, some 20-year-old kid who can't even get on the marksman team in his high school, walking around with a damn rangefinder and a ladder, just about killed the president, and then, they seen him doing it. They watched him, crawling around on the roof, walking around with a rangefinder, and it's like, are you serious? It's not possible. Okay. And neither are the things that targets deal with on a regular basis. But when you have something obvious that you can latch onto, whether it's obvious harassment, people are in your face, they're not using the covert techniques, you're not reacting, and you are making them break out of their cover and leave their camouflage and attack you in a way that is unmistakable. Or when they have those real aggressive days where they want to get under your skin, well, you make a mental note of it, because the gaslighting can be intense. And when you move through this experience as a targeted individual, it's not just going to be over, in a year or 2 or 5 years. This could go on for the rest of your life. And the gaslighting is real intense at that point. Okay. So let me find my little magnifying glass and go into the comments here and see who has joined us. Catherine Jennifer, welcome to the live stream. Unaverage Joe, awesome, welcome. Pamela Barone, Bora Bora, look up. June Mama, Big Mama's here. Tanisha Cowell, firefighter, awesome. NC, welcome to the live stream. Just Me, Heidi, you were the first one. And yes, Psalm 91 is good. God is with us. And as long as you seek him and you try to please the Lord, he will work these things out for your benefit. And he is able to do that. He is not intimidated by this. And he has set the parameters of his creation up to where he doesn't have to meticulously control things to be sovereign. He is not intimidated or stifled by the decisions and the malevolent activity of people in his creation, and he can still work that out no matter what. It's wonderful assurance to have, indeed. And let's see what else is going on here in the comments. Oh yeah, but we finally got up to 2,000 subscribers. Of course, that'll probably change. It seems like there's people that just come on here and then it's like, I don't know, all of a sudden 10 subs will disappear. I don't pay attention. I don't pay attention to that because I'm not really trying to grow the channel. I'm not really, one of those people. I'm actually trying to thin out the herd sometimes. I'm not trying to be abrasive, but I'm not going to back off of my position of the spiritual reality of gangstalking. A lot of people don't like it. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They're out there talking about the supercomputers that are controlling the whole menagerie of people that are after you, and everybody's on this neural monitoring network. I know they're working on that stuff, and who knows exactly how this works, but you cannot deny the spiritual aspect of it. A lot of people don't like that. If I wanted to grow the channel, in other words, I would just sit around and talk about all that and just kind of basically focus on nothing but technology and government stuff. People love it because there are a lot of people out there that are dealing with gang stalking, that are being harassed spiritually. And the proof of that is that they're being taken into a place where they are literally they have a disposition against that. They have maybe even a hostility towards the idea of God and of all those things. And it's part and parcel of what we're dealing with. It really is. And a lot of people have been rubbed the wrong way. Maybe they've gone to church as a targeted individual, and just because you're at a church doesn't mean you're not going to get gang stalking. I would say that it could even be more intense. I've experienced that myself, unfortunately. Okay. But the thing you have to remember, and that is that the church is not a building on 7th Street on the corner of, your local, city or whatever. That is just a building where people get together and you never know who's going to be there. You have the wheat and the tares, in other words. And of course, the kingdom of darkness knows that they're going to put their agents in places that are very critical, and people who are drawing near to God and looking for the truth, right? They got to have people there. And sometimes, unfortunately, even the ministers or the leaders who are involved in those organizations are the scariest. And of course, the disguise is that Christian guise. You have, the wolves in the sheep's clothing, and at the last second, you'll deal with a lot of targets will deal with that. And it's the infiltrators and those people who get close to you that can really hurt you and generate the most emotional currency and psychological manipulation. Let's see who else is out there. And Just Me Heidi says the gaslighting is heavy, and once you start expressing what's going on, they move in like vultures. That's a good point. I don't think I could describe that in a better way than Just Me Heidi says. It is like dealing with vultures. And that is exactly what they do. That is a very a good insight and a very descriptive, accurate way to explain this, because targeted individuals, you're dealing with so many different types of attack. It's the death of 1,000 cuts, and they're just swarming around you like a bunch of damn vultures. And when you start to feel the effects of the harassment, or you start to maybe confront people, we'll say you're dealing with a social circle dilemma or something like a family, a familial thing, and it's like the whole thing is designed for that. It's like they were waiting for you to start losing enough blood to where you're laying down in that proverbial desert that they've created for you. You're nailed to the cross, so to speak. You're in that place where the blood is in the water, the sharks are coming, the vultures are swarming around you, and then of course they're going to come in, and the gaslighting does become very intense at that point, because of course, what are you talking about? That's crazy. It's not possible. Well, what do you believe that all these people? How could all these people? What's so important about you? We love you. And it's sickening. And of course, it just promotes even more of an emotional response from the targeted individual. And it's really the people that have that disguise that are the king vultures in that aspect, to where they have more plausible deniability than anyone. It's that narcissist or that honeypot or that covert infiltrator that just, of course, they just want to help. They've gotten you to that place where you're dysfunctional, where you're dependent, where you're vulnerable, and they've indoctrinated people around the target. And now, if the target's only telling the truth, and what's going to happen? Well, you're whacked out, man. You're crazy. That's crazy talk. What do you mean? People are after you. What do you mean demons? What are you talking about? What do you mean people at your workplace are why? And there's nothing you can do. And I've talked about that before. You better be damn careful as a target individual, because as Heidi mentioned, they are like vultures, and they are waiting for you to start talking. And I've talked about the contradiction of me making videos like this. Well, I mean, I'm doing it for people out there who are going to experience harassment. And, these people have been doing this stuff to me for a long time. And believe you me, I have a cover for what I'm doing. And if I do get confronted about this, I have the perfect answer, believe you me. And it's not what you'd expect. And I would like all of you to remember that when you're dealing with this dilemma, that, discussing these things is dangerous. And you have to be careful about the details you give away. And trying to explain it to people who don't know anything about gang stalking is that's a brick wall to bang your head on right there. And of course, the individuals who know about this stuff are going to laugh, and they're going to get off on it, man. They love it. They love it. And for the people who have conformed in those different fraternities and social circles in the corruption of this conformity, you're the evidence that they made the right choice because, of course, they don't want to end up crazy and discredited like you. Okay, moving back into the comments. Okay. Tanisha Cole, welcome to the live stream. I was in the Air Force. The majority of my gang stalkers were people that I served with and a lot of Navy veterans. Huh? Well, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about being experimented on in the military. Okay, so that's who knows. But the military is different than it used to be. There's a different criteria that's out there, and I've heard of a lot of the black ops stuff in the Air Force and moving into the Navy. So you never know. You could have been selected as some type of test subject or something like that. You just don't know. A lot of people have been experimented on, and I've never really trusted the government or the military. Even as a child, I knew something was going on when I was watching the stuff happen concerning Vietnam. None of it added up to me. And as I grew and saw a lot of the things that were happening, I feel completely justified in that. So you just never know. But I appreciate you sharing that with us. Okay. Let's see here. What do we got here? And NC says, does de facto have a solution to get TIs removed from the terrorist watch list? No, I don't. And the fact that people can get put on that list is probably the larger dilemma, and that the criteria for that, where you have the Patriot Act and so on and so forth, is that they're not only can they just basically put anybody on that list. There's used to, I don't know if you can even find out if you're on it now. I know they used to show up in background checks. I did a background check on myself, and I found out I was on a watch list. I think it was back in 2017 or something like that. And I was like, wow, that was before I did any of these things or talked about this or, had any type of social media profile at all. I did do a lot of research as far as biblical doctrine, and I looked into conspiracy theories. I suppose that could have been it, but I don't. And, like I said before, when I was talking about the logistics of gang stalking, there are government programs, there are things going on with community policing and good old boy societies, fraternities, and occult organizations. But to assume that the reason that all this is happening is because you're on a terrorist watch list could be a type of syllogistic conclusion. It's just like when people were hearing voices, it's got to be V2K, or it could have, it had to have been that dentist appointment when they put me out for my wisdom tooth. Now I got an implant in my jaw. Maybe, I don't know. But you just, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. There is a lot of possibilities. And to be hyper focused on the fact that you're on a terrorist watch list, I would imagine that, as far as the criteria for that, there are a lot of people out there who at this point, I wouldn't even think it would matter. I think they're just watching everybody. I do. I think, when you get into the data storage sites out in the desert, I think there's one in Utah that's just huge, is that everything, even back to the 70s, is being recorded and stored. Conversations you had, if you're as old as I am and you grew up in the 70s, those supposedly all those communications are recorded and stored. And then you have, of course, the satellite array that's constantly, taking video, and really, there's so much surveillance that I don't even think it would matter at this point. I think everybody is being watched all the time. Yeah, they hone in on people, and I think targeted individuals can become, part of that extracurricular activity. But I don't. To get back to that, I don't have a way to get off it. I don't. If you're being stalked and harassed, I wouldn't even worry about the watch list thing anymore. There's more going on as far as I'm concerned. If people want to get off the watch list and they think their gang stalking is going to stop. I think it's bigger than that. I don't think that would even matter. Watch list is the least of your worries. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just scanning through the comments here. Average Joe says, being that this crime is against the humanity, according to the Geneva Convention, this is a crime punishable by death. Shall the perps one day be held accountable and serve justice? Well, they will be. Probably not by a human government. Possibly. I mean, I've talked about that before. We could have full disclosure, but there's been so many examples of corruption and people doing this kind of stuff up in the hierarchy in the government that that's not my hope. To get justice from, a human government that is controlled by a hierarchy of malevolent spiritual beings that, as far as their modus operandi is to steal, kill, and destroy you. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot there until Jesus comes back. I think that we're going to be waiting for that ultimate justice. And so your hope, interesting point though, Average Joe, Unaverage Joe, is that, it is against all the laws of the universe. It is against the Geneva Convention. Human experimentation is definitely punishable by death in the case where, this stuff is reckless and it's basically murder. It's just a real slow way of killing someone, torturing them to death. You never know what's going to happen. The casualties can be, out in a lot of different directions. I've talked about, just the fact that targeted individuals who are experiencing even lighter forms of harassment could be complacent or having trouble concentrating because of sleep deprivation and anxiety. They could cause an auto accident. They could cause a workplace accident. Somebody's going to get hurt. They don't care. It's reckless. But I think the hope of all targets is that God is going to work these things out, to see the reality of the spiritual dimension around you, to see the problem of evil defined and displayed in such a clear way, to generate and strengthen your faith, and that you are moving towards eternal life. This experience that you have right now in this fleshly body that you have, with the sentence of death that is on you, that is an unnatural separation, this isn't the end all be all of who you are and your existence. This is just the preliminary stage, and what you do with it and what you realize. And if you move towards God and accept Jesus Christ, then you're going to have that perfect justice, and you're not even going to be worried about it. But until that happens, the government, the hierarchy, the world, well, they're under the power of Satan, under the control of the kingdom of darkness. And as far as anybody getting called out on this, what do they usually do? They usually bury it away, and they can do that. I mean, even the simple stuff that goes into some of the bad drugs. I've talked about the experience I had with benzodiazepines, and that they covered that stuff up back in the early 90s. They did a study and found that it actually puts a protein in your brain, and it throws individuals who get the post-acute withdrawal into a state of anxiety and panic for up to 2 years or more, even if they stop taking the benzos, right? And they knew about it, and they didn't stop giving it. They just went and got a bunch of judges to pass laws that they could sell the chemicals with generic companies and avoid class action lawsuits to get all the lawyers off their back. And it worked, and they're still doing it. But there's still people out there that are committing suicide. There are still people whose lives and families are ruined over that stuff, and nobody's doing anything about it. When you move through your landscape as a target individual, there's a lot of people that know what you're going through. I mean, if they know your business and they're harassing you and they're playing little games with you, well, what's that say? I don't hope for that. I think it'd be nice, and I think it could be possible. There's things that are out there concerning Havana syndrome and other things that are being disclosed, and I think there's hope that that at least, if nothing else, there's going to be awareness, and maybe there are people out there who, like I've said before, if you don't, you don't react and you play it cool, somebody's going to get caught. Whether or not it's going to come back on, the puppet masters, I don't know, but we can always hope, I guess. Going back into the comments, Nicholas Boserman, welcome to the live stream. Okay. And on average, Joe, I'm having a hard time with my magnifying glass here. On average, Joe, this may sound odd, but I have a theory that targets are flagged on the internet monitoring program based off our internet history. Enough flags gets you on the list. I believe that. I bet you that's part of it. Absolutely. I believe that would definitely be a good guess. I don't think it sounds odd at all. Oh, and by the way, I found this out the other day, and I keep forgetting to mention it because people on the channel keep getting a hold of me, or every now and again they'll say, "Did you erase my comments, Dr. DeFacto? What happened to my comments? Does anybody else notice my comments?" I'm not erasing anybody's comments. Sometimes I will do that if it's a personal attack against somebody else or me, or it's just disruptive or disgusting or something like that. I will. But I will admit it. Okay. And if somebody's like that, and it's not just something that's, temporary or whatever, I'll usually mute the individual. But there is something out there concerning, artificial intelligence that is literally monitoring the internet. And I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I think it's, oh my God, for some reason, as I was trying to explain that I'm not erasing the comments, I forgot what it's called. I can't remember the name right now. That's kind of hilarious, but it's literally doing that on a wide scale on the internet. People are noticing that on their social media and on other channels, and it's using the excuse that some people might be talking about something that's unacceptable concerning the violation of people's rights, or defamation against a religious community or a group, or something that's racial. And they have a lot of different criteria that's involved in that. God, I can't remember the name. Hopefully I'll remember that before the show is over. But I can't remember. I know it was on Redacted. I don't know if you guys ever watched that. That's got some interesting stuff on that. In fact, I've got a video that I put up that has to do with, I think it was probably the Trump assassination attempt and other videos. But anyway, evidently that's been out there doing that. So it's not just this channel. It's on a lot of different platforms. So that's the explanation for that. And let's go back into the comments. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Maybe you can come up with it. I can't remember the name right now. Gemini. It was Gemini. That's what it was. The Gemini program or something like that. Tanisha Cole, that's shadow banning. A lot of TIs have content on YouTube and their comments are deleted. Okay. Yeah, and I've also had a lot of comments from a lot of targets that come in and say that they, or they're trying to search for my channel or type in Gangstalking or whatever, and they can never find my channel, and they've been, scouring through the internet looking for material on Gangstalking, and they just, see something that you guys share, and that's how they find the channel, which I would like to, encourage everybody to hit the like button and share with as many people on whatever platforms you can the material that we have. I know I've been making a lot of videos. I've been doing mostly live streams because I know you guys like to interact and you want to come in here and, talk with each other and have the opportunity to get to know other targeted individuals and it's fun to have a real-time conversation. One of the things that we all deal with as targeted individuals is isolation and deprivation. And for me, this is basically like having a phone conversation with, however many people that are in here. Just me. Heidi showed up first, and I thought, hey, if it's just one person, that's fine with me. Eventually I'd like to move into a different, a format to where we're having people as guests and people can go ahead and interact in different ways. And I'd like to move forward with that. But there's just been so many things going on, guys, that, I just haven't done that. Like I've mentioned several times before, somebody had already cut the communications line to this dwelling back in, I think it was 2022. There's a video about that target. I think it was gangstalking evidence or something like that, where you can literally see it. And I've had people break into the house. I was actually cleaning my air conditioner in the front yard. It was last summer, and I wasn't that far from my front door, and it's probably like 10, 15 feet away. And the hose is, because I'm in one of those 1.5 addresses. I live behind the main dwelling, and I don't have the water shut off in here, and I also don't have access to the hose, for watering the lawn and all that stuff. So I had to walk, around the building just for, 30 seconds or whatever to turn the water. I came back, my door's open, and I'm thinking at first, I'm not, because I got cameras everywhere. I got cameras pointing at the door. I got cameras on the inside of my living room pointing at the door. I've got cameras around the house. I got cameras in my room. I got cameras, everywhere. I got 7 cameras around me. And I'm thinking, wow, I probably didn't even close the door. So I went in, closed the door. And when I went back to turn the water off again, I came back and it was open. And so I'm thinking, well, that's going to be easy. Got everything put together, put the air conditioner in the window, and I went over and looked at the, because it's not even hooked up to the internet. And I'm thinking, oh, let's see what's going on. That was stupid. I'm definitely going to catch them this time. It was all erased. The only thing I had on my system was that it was set back to 1970, and the cameras in the alley, there was footage. Everything else was erased. And I'm like, how in the hell did they do that? So I called up, the makers of my equipment, and I asked them how they did it. And they said they probably, hacked it Bluetooth. And they're like, yeah, you put a different password, put some, get in there. And I was like, my gosh, you're talking about a coordinated effort, unless it was something spiritual. I mean, you don't know. And that's one of the dilemmas that target individuals deal with. They deal with things that are unexplainable, impossible, and logistically ridiculous, right? You walk around the building for 30 seconds and somebody, gets in your house, and then erases all your security camera footage, and it's not even hooked up to the internet. Yeah, okay. Like, people are going to believe that. Sure, Billy. Sure they did. That's okay. Maybe we should make you a doctor's appointment. Yeah. All right. Robert Mann says targets are the 144,000. It's not many of us ever. So I don't think that's what the Bible is talking about when it speaks of the 144,000. There is a lot of different ideas that go floating around in the religious community of who those people are. Some would say that they're people who are in Christ, and the description that they follow the Lamb wherever he will go, and so on and so forth. And they're, virgins and so on and so forth. But it describes the male Jews. And when you look at biblical prophecy, you have to remember whether you're dealing with the 70 weeks of Daniel or the desolations determined in the book of Jeremiah, and leading up from the exile in Babylon up to the regathering of Israel, that you are looking at a prophecy timeline that is illustrated very eloquently by the 1290 days of until the abomination of desolation, which is actually days, years, or the decree that goes to rebuild the city from 444 BC to the time of Jesus in 32 AD, along with the Dead Sea Scrolls after the 9th Jubilee in 32 AD. So in order to understand who the 144,000 are, or the prophecies of Daniel, or the book of Revelations, or all those things, you have to remember that we have something going on. In the Garden of Eden, you had the fall of man. Then we moved into the place where you had the Genesis 6 account, where you had the genetic mingling and the interference from the angelic realm into mankind. Okay, so you had the promise of the seed of the woman to crush the head of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Then you had the infiltration into the gene pool of humans. A lot of people will speculate that that was to prevent the seed of the woman, or to corrupt the human genome of the Messiah, who is literally God incarnate, right, through the virgin, which is a sign given to the Jewish people. And when you get into the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the order of Zadok, or the Essenes, the original beginnings of the Antichrist began with the Pharisees obfuscating the reality of the Christ, or God coming incarnate, or the Melchizedek, the final king of righteousness, and teacher of righteousness, after the order of Melchizedek, which is the Christ. Okay, and so they changed to the lunar calendar from the solar calendar, and so on and so forth. And then when you're moving into these timelines, you're going to see a constant theme. So from the Genesis 6 account, then we had the flood, and of course God started over again, and he had not disinherited the nations yet. But when they resurrected that technology and did the things that they were forbidden to do, they were told to spread out and multiply and be fruitful, and they did not do that. They tried to manipulate, and they built the ziggurat, and they resurrected that forbidden technology that was given out during the Genesis 6 account. You can see some of that stuff in the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, whether it's makeup or alchemy, how to make weapons, technology, science, and so forth. And God disinherited the nations, and he started over with Abraham, which is who the Jews are, right? Okay, so then from Abraham, we have something very interesting going on, because God made the promise to Abraham that his seed would bless the nations. Well, what is that? Is that talking about all the Jews? Well, it's talking about a seed singular, who is Jesus, right? So the purpose of God's election concerning Abraham is to what? To bring forth the Christ. Okay, the prophecy of Melchizedek, the one who is going to die for the sins of humanity and reconcile mankind to God. Okay, so the Jews were judicially hardened and judged, right? The book of Jeremiah, okay, they went through the law and the 5 successions of judgment, and they failed, and God judged them. And when he showed up, he had all that stuff concerning the parables, and he fulfilled prophecy, but they had become dull, and they did not understand who he was, because they were not taught of God and the prophets. That's John 6:45, right? Okay, and then they killed Jesus. They literally crucified him, right? They fulfilled prophecy on that. But of course, Christ had victory in that, and then began the dispensation, not only to the Jews, which was before that, but to the rest of the world. So the infiltration of the gospel into the world began in Acts after the death of Jesus. And of course, the original apostles, they laid the foundations, and that's what Paul was talking about when he went out in there, and he wanted to go out to the furthest reaches of the known world at that time, because that was his job. Okay, and then after the foundations were laid, then now we have the Great Commission, in that it pleased God to save them that which believe the gospel. Okay, so you have the nations also being grafted into what we call Israel now. But God is not done with the Jewish people, which is supersessionism, where some people believe true Israel and that God is done with the Jews. He's absolutely not done with them. And it says, do not be high-minded against the natural branches, or the Jews, because they could be grafted back in if they believe what? They believe in the Messiah. They believe the gospel, right? The new covenant, which is what, a lot of people will call it, of course. And, when they see the one whom they pierced, right, when they see the sign of the Son of Man at the return of Christ, that all Israel will be saved, okay? And so he's not done with them. And when he returns, he is going, after the Antichrist, all that stuff is revealed. Well, who is 144,000? Well, it's going to be people that are going to be sealed, right? at that time of that great tribulation, that assault on the Jewish people, and they're gonna be protected and all those. So there's a lot of different theories going on. But when people start turning targeted individuals into the 144,000, I'd have to respectfully disagree with that, or saying that just because you're gang stalked, you're going to go to heaven or you're chosen. I wouldn't turn gang stalking into a soteriological doctrine. It just doesn't fit, because anybody can become saved or enter into heaven, but not because of that, but because they believe the gospel and they submit to Jesus Christ. So it's dangerous for people to adopt those things, but it is an interesting thought. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Well, I'm scanning through the comments here. Let's see here. Well, it looks like you guys are having a good conversation out there. I'm just looking for something I could build on. Well, it doesn't look like there's anything out there now. Well, do you guys have any questions? Maybe I'm missing something here. Okay. Strange Moment says, do Faraday cages work? Well, technically they should. Of course, that gets into a lot of speculation when you're dealing with what is going on to the targeted individual and exactly what they're dealing with. If it's the traditional type of electronic communication, a Faraday cage would certainly work. But a lot of targets have tried that, and what happens? Well, it doesn't work. Okay, so then you're speculating about scalar waves or different types of implants or whatever, or you're looking at something that's spiritual, right? Or other mechanisms that involve the psychic driving and things that are just, kind of regurgitating around in the target's mind. But there is a lot of speculation concerning that. It just depends on what you're dealing with. Certain things help in certain situations. I've heard targets talk about shielding and how that helped. Okay, technically, if you're dealing with classic microwave weapons, it would have to. There's no way around it. Okay, but then of course you get into different theories that involve hydrodyning and neuromonitoring, where people are hooked up literally in unison with another human being, and they're experiencing the things that the other person is experiencing. I don't know if I would really buy into all that or whatever. My point is that there are a lot of speculations as to how these things are happening, but at the end of the day, we know that if you pray to God, that He will work all things out for the benefit of those who trust in Him and draw near to Him and ask. So, whatever is going on, that would be my first course of action: to draw near to God, to spend time listening to sermons and studying His Word, so on and so forth. If you're under attack, if you're hearing V2K or you're dealing with energy weapons, that'd be the first thing that I would do. And then you could experiment with other things. But like I said, it's pretty straightforward. If you're getting hit with some kind of microwave weapon or something like that, you can block it. Okay, and if you can't, then it's not a microwave weapon. Okay. So I don't know though. There's so many things out there, and there's so much speculation, and there's a huge resistance in the target individual community to the spiritual application. Like I said, I'm not trying to be popular. I'm just telling you guys what works for me. And the whole idea that you can be standing next to someone and get hit with a microwave weapon, and they don't know. I don't know. I just, I don't know. It just depends on what kind of technology is out there. I'm not aware of all that, so I don't spend the majority of my time, searching into that stuff, because I found that a lot of the literature that's out there is speculative. Directed energy weapons are there, They're definitely, in existence. V2K is definitely not speculative. All those things are real. But when you get into the whole question of why can't I, shield myself against it, I don't know. People talk about different radio waves and other types of technology. So I don't know. I would imagine, though, if you're dealing with the known technology that we know about, you could block it. Okay. And FNE says, Dr. De facto, how do you think people get put into this program? But it depends on what you're dealing with. It depends on how it's working out for a targeted individual. It's like, on average, Joe mentioned some different criteria as far as just getting thrown into something like this. You could be flagged for a lot of different things. But from my experience and the things that targets deal with is higher targets who are dealing with higher forms of harassment. It's way bigger than some type of government program. Those things exist. I'm not denying that. But if you're a target who's dealing with, logistically impossible stuff and you're dealing with it on a consistent basis to where it goes out for years or decades, you're probably you could be dealing with all of that. But I would look more at the spiritual application as to why these things are happening. Because like I said many times, obfuscating the reality of where you came from, who you are, what you're dealing with, the reality of the spiritual dimension, the reality of heaven, hell, the devil, Christ, all those things are at the foundation of this huge menagerie that you're dealing with, whether it's, science, we just came from an explosion, or, we have 50 million year old dinosaur bones that have pliable collagen in them, and just it's some kind of mystery with iron that preserved the blood vessels. It's ridiculous. Okay, there is an obvious agenda to obfuscate the reality of where you came from and where you're going. Okay, that's first. Second, there's an agenda to control people. Okay, there's an agenda to create a hierarchy too, and then there's an agenda to experiment. And then there's the condemnation that I've talked about. Targets are like bait. Really the people who are attacking you and doing all these things to you are the ones that are really getting screwed. Okay, they're, the kingdom of darkness. It's like when you get into the higher levels of the secret societies, they have a lot of different rituals where you'll, call down curses on yourself if you defect from the Freemasons or, the Illuminati or the Skull and Bones. Or whatever, and it's you're making oaths, you're going through rituals, you're doing these different things, and then on top of that, you're initiated. Okay, and I would imagine that some of the people who do the gang stalking, the perps, the handlers, so on and so forth, they're getting their hands dirty. They're getting their hands dirty in a way that I've talked about that before. Just think about the manufactured justification that you deal with as a target, right? People are convinced that they have the right to do this stuff to you, and you probably haven't even done anything, let alone some of the things that people will do when they become involved in gang stalking individuals or ruining their lives or whatever. Okay. So people are being condemned is my point. And they want to deceive people. They want to condemn people. But when you get into the government aspect of it, I would imagine that there are people who are being profiled, and they fit into what I was talking about earlier, like with the Manchurian Candidate concerning, Thomas Crookie or other people, Sirhan, individuals that fit a certain profile that they can use as a patsy. It's classic. It's classic modus operandi for the CIA or other deep state projects or whatever. And they use that kind of stuff. They need guinea pigs. They need people they can experiment on. They want to find out how to silence whistleblowers. And when targeted individuals get profiled, there's probably criteria that puts them into whatever experiment that they're using, for whatever they're trying to accomplish. Right? You're a loner or whatever, or maybe you don't follow, the herd or whatever it is. that they have decided for criteria. So I don't call it. People talk about. They'll say, "Well, you're in the gang stalking program." Am I? I don't know exactly what that necessarily means. There's a lot of different things going on. People are being used as scapegoats. Well, they're being used as objects of coercion and deterrence for people in fraternities and secret societies and occult organizations. They're being experimented on. They're being tested. Things are being used. There's methods that are being developed. There's different infrastructures that are being I don't know, hypothetically tested for community policing and other things. So I would imagine that people are profiled, and individuals who are on the verge of being discredited or fit that criteria, just like the patsy for different government false flag operations or whatever, could be part of that. But think about it this way. When targets are discredited, right? What happens? Well, we could put it this way. Okay, look at it this way. You guys remember when I brought up how the targeted individual was in danger? Okay, because there are perps out there. People have infiltrated the targeted individual community, and they're pretending like they're TIs. They're trying to get information, or they're masquerading as people who want to help targeted individuals. Okay, and it's interesting that they kind of gravitate towards certain people. I've noticed. Oh, you're hearing 24-hour V2K. You're dealing with this, or you're dealing with that, or you think accident scenes have been set up for you. Oh, really? Interesting. What city do you live in? What state do you live in? What's your email address? Don't think for a minute that the targeted individual community isn't a hunting ground. You could literally get put into this program, whatever you're thinking of, whatever kind of sub-program is out there. People are experimenting on individuals, and they're looking for people who are easy to discredit. You don't think they're going to look here? What's this person talking about? They're hearing voices. Here, let's find out who that is, because they're talking about hearing voices on a public platform. Nobody will believe them. They're already halfway there. This is a perfect test subject for what we need. That's why, I kind of warn people as to what's going on as far as the information they're giving out and so on and so forth, or whether they appear publicly on their channel, right? They're showing up there, and there's shows out there that you have to show your face, right? You got to show your face and give your name for, so people are, it's like, what? Why do I have to do that? I would never, ever make someone do that if I had a guest. You can be as anonymous as you want. You can come in and do whatever you want as far as, what you look like and what your name is, because nobody has the right to do that. You're already dealing with enough. And people are literally infiltrating the target individual community. Very suspicious, right? And I've warned people about that. Don't believe that stuff, man. There's a reason why they want to know who you are, where you live, and what you look like. And could you get a little closer to the camera? We have a retinal scanner we want to use on you. Really? And then targets, talk about how there's DNA resonance frequency, and they're trying to get your DNA, and they want. Well, there's a danger in online forums. Stay as anonymous as possible. That'd be my advice on that. Okay. And Strange Moment says that I'm apparently Alice in Wonderland. Well, I think that would probably, and I'm assuming you're not joking around, because those are things that targets are, harassed with, because that's, you're thrown down the rabbit hole, so to speak, or you're in the Wizard of Oz, right? Here we go, down the yellow brick road. Here comes the tornado. You're in Kansas until we get done with you, Dorothy. And I've heard a lot of jokes like that. There's a lot of sarcastic remarks that targets will deal with, or you're in the Twilight Zone, or you're in the outer limits, right? We're going to drive you crazy. So there's a lot of things that targets get in the directed conversations and innuendos that are used against them. But I'm assuming you're serious on that. And I've heard stuff like that. There literally could be a program that would be called something like that because it would fit the modus operandi of flipping the reality of the individual and putting them in a state to where they're being covertly drugged. Their world is nothing more than a nightmare. It's a complete distortion of reality for the targeted individual who's exposed to these techniques of sensitization and gaslighting that we talked about at the beginning of the show. So that'd be funny if later we found out that there was a government program called Alice in Wonderland. It sounds accurate. That'd be funny. Okay. And C says, what do you think about them controlling bugs? I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of experimentation going on, a lot of testing that is done as far as developing more covert types of drones, even to the point of nanotechnology, to where you can't even see this stuff. And I don't know. I would imagine that they've been doing that stuff probably for the last 40, 50 years. I don't know. I don't have anything, this concrete evidence to do that, but I know that they have been experimenting on stuff like that because if they can incorporate the natural look of an insect along with the technological aspect of maybe a small camera or something like that that can communicate with maybe a sniper team or a secret government agent or something like that, to where they could send in little drones that basically are insects with cameras or different equipment on them or whatever, like a little bumblebee or maybe some type of moth or something or a fly or whatever, and incorporate that technology into that. Not only are you bypassing the need for electricity and some of that aspect of that, and you're using the biological system of the insect, and you could literally stimulate the wings of an insect or whatever with different chemical processes or electrical signals, and you could probably even steer and fly them things around. I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating. I've seen things like that before. So I would imagine they're probably doing stuff like that, and they have been probably for quite a while. The drone technology and the nanotechnology and other different things that they're using, probably pretty sophisticated. Jason McKim, welcome to the live stream. Says, sometimes I get so frustrated, it just keeps coming. And it is so stupid sometimes. Orange lights that are placed strategically so you'll see them. That's interesting. That'd be a good example of sensitization, which is in the title of this show. That would be a good tactic to use against a targeted individual, because it's something that you would notice if they're using something like that, maybe as environmental tyranny for the target. But that'd be a good example of that, along with the other things that targeted individuals deal with, just to keep you in that state of hypervigilance and to keep you in a place where you're in fight or flight, to trigger the target individual. I've talked about the associations that have reciprocity, that it's not only just the things that are used to sensitize and trigger the victim, but it's the exponential spider web associations that are created out of that subjective stimuli and that environmental tyranny that have the reciprocity, that it incorporates itself even back into your childhood or into your memories, and incorporating more the triggers for the target. Like, if you get harassed by a family member, well, now holidays are going to remind you of stalking, because you're supposed to be with your family on holiday, right? Now you can't even experience Christmas without gang stalking. Of course, it reminds you you're alone. You start thinking about all those things. It's a trigger. You got to stop yourself from thinking about it. And when you deal with different triggers or objects of significance used in sensitization, remembering the motive behind all these things is important, because really it's insignificant. You have to consider the source of your harassment and realize that these people want to control you, in a sense that they want to direct your thoughts. They want to, control the trajectory of your mind and your emotions. And if you see something like that, rather than, oh, they're going to do something, or think about, this is an opportunity for me to take control of the scenario and not react, and keep a mental note of this whole thing and watch and observe them. They are the test subjects at that point. You can reverse this whole thing and turn them into the guinea pig to see what they're going to do next. That's what I do. Okay. And you can have fun with it that way. And if you're not reacting, if you're in a place, where they have to become aggressive or they have to switch up their tactics, you learn more about what's going on than if you try to confront someone. Right? A lot of people say, well, you go up and confront them, or, you let them know that or that's the last thing you do. Don't ever do that. Okay. You want them to wonder, what you're thinking. You want them, to be speculating as to why you're not reacting. You want them to have to change the techniques and the themes and the methodology that they're using to trigger you, because now you're in control, right? You are forcing their hand. They are not forcing your hand. You are following protocols. You are living in a way where you are canceling out the desired effect of the stalking and harassment, and that they cannot control you. They cannot trigger you. And, you're basically flipping the tables on them. Okay. Okay, Just Me Heidi says, my program name for them is the Clown Show, especially when so many come out at you like from a little car. Yeah, they like the clown thing. And I've put that in videos before, and I found I was kind of triggering people, and I didn't mean to do that. The clown thing is a popular theme, and it's naturally, going to be used because it's one of those aspects of gang stalking that goes into traumatic mind control, and that clowns are the perfect, way just to do that traumatic invasion, because the frightening aspect of a clown, not only because they've been incorporated in horror movies and there's a total, stigma around them now, where they're the classic, horror character, whether you get into, the Stephen King movies with It, or you get into other things, the clowns from outer space, or other characters, that have that whole symbology around them, which really goes back into the secret societies, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know that the clowns and the jokers, the jesters, they were literally demon-possessed people that were used to channel spirits back in the older times when that stuff was invented. That was originally what was going on with that. A lot of people don't know that. That's the mythos around those things, or the Joker, the clown, and so on and so forth. They were like the Oikotarians that would channel these spirits, and it's really weird when you look into that stuff. Gary Wayne goes into a lot of that, but you don't know what the clown thing is interesting, because just outright you're dealing with something that's masked. So somebody walks up to you with any kind of a mask on, and you don't know who's behind it, right? So there's a lot of symbology involved in gang stalking that involves the clown thing, right? You're dealing with people who are being covert. They are hiding behind different disguises. They are using psychological, methods to trigger you, to freak you out, to scare you, and you don't know what you're dealing with, right? You have something that is supposedly smiling. You have a surreal character that is surrounded by plausible deniability, but is perceived in a way where it's almost like when you smell a chemical or something that you don't understand. Your body has a type of subconscious reaction to that, to where it's unknown, and in that sense, it's just like the dark waters, the chaos of the sea, or of a large body of water. You don't know what's down there. It represents something that is surreal and chaotic and unknown. And for that aspect, it's good for that type of traumatic invasion. Not to mention the symbology and the mythos that involves that type of demonic element. And the other aspect of the clown thing, of course, for a lot of people who don't know that stuff that I just talked about, is that they just want to try and turn you into a clown, right? They want to get you into this dysfunctional little character, this little mascot that they can play with and control, right? They want to get you, hooked up to all their little puppet strings and make you dance around on their little stage. So there's a lot of different things that go into that, but the clown thing is pretty popular. Okay. All right. Let's see what we have out there. Well, C says, and this is kind of interesting, and that would be just the letter C, in case I was not clear on my communication. Sometimes I feel like they mess with us because we have a high influence in our manifestation, very powerful. So they are trying to manifest things through us, such as pulling vibration down. So you're talking about the different things involved in the invisible realm or frequencies and so on and so forth. That people talk about auras or chakras, and there is some science and truth to that stuff. I try to avoid that, but a lot of that science comes out of the invasion in Genesis 6, because you see a lot of that stuff in different religions and so on and so forth. But to pull it into a more, I don't know, a place where you're not deviating too much from the biblical criteria, is that they do want to control your emotions and speculatively the vibrations and the electrical energy that's involved in your body and all that stuff. I would imagine those things are connected, and then they're trying to control you. Speculatively, there's a lot of people that would say they're even feeding on some of that. You talk about loosh. I don't know. You wonder what these people are getting out of this stuff. They have prioritized their activity and their resources around doing these things to you, and have passed up normal, productive, and seemingly more realistic options to enjoy themselves. So there's obviously a need. When you see somebody doing something, there's always a reason they're doing it. A lot of people will speculate that you're dealing with the spiritual vampire. People are getting off, controlling targets or triggering them or getting them to manifest or whatever you're going to look at it as. But for them, it is a type of control at the very least. And I've talked about some of the spiritual criteria, and along with the accusation gaslighting, where they are provoking targets not only to do something so that they can have that type of legal leeway into their life. We get the honeypot. You get involved in an illicit sexual relationship, or you get into drugs, or you get angry, or you act out and do something, or whatever, or they're getting the target in a place where they can accuse them or manipulate them or whatever. But they are trying to control you in that way. Okay. And Nicholas Boserman says, my V2K used to say, douche the loosh. I didn't know. Wow. What that was. That's so was it like repetitive, or was it just like every now and again? I'd like to see the response on that. But thanks for sharing with us on that one, Nicholas, because there's a lot of targets out there who will deal with different themes. I talked about the psychic driving that's involved in the MK Ultra, different themes that are geared towards the gaslighting that would involve the inevitable internalization of these things into the target's, I don't know, their identity. So, in other words, when you deal with that type of gaslighting in the place where the target believes they're crazy or whatever. They start giving into the gaslighting and believing the lie, where all these people are just trying to help me, and I need help, or they have the right to do this to me, or I'm just crazy, or whatever. Okay, that you're internalizing those things. The gaslighting will come at the target image. Well, you're overreacting, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. Of course, the whole idea of obfuscating the activity that got you to the point where you're dysfunctional is paramount in that, in the sense that they want you to take the blame. And I've mentioned that before. If you're a targeted individual and you do screw up, you do act out, you do read into something, you become confused, you quit your job, or you react, or whatever happens, don't beat yourself up over it, and don't let them beat you up over it. Okay, that's. I've had people do that with me. I've had people trip out on me and overreact, and I've done the same thing. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm crazy. It doesn't mean that I'm mentally ill either. Okay, what it means is I'm a victim of stalking and harassment, and I probably have complex post-traumatic syndrome. Okay, that's what happens to people that are harassed. Okay. That's why I don't usually hold a grudge against somebody if they start calling me a perp, because they're confused. They've been attacked and harassed. And not only that, they're probably dealing with demonic stuff, or even things that involve, technology we're unaware of. And they're taken into that place whether I'm around them or not. Okay. And that's definitely something to remember. The gaslighting involves that type of internalization. And the goal ultimately is to get you to buy into that proposition. That's part of the propositional tyranny that comes out of the gaslighting. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Bora Bora says it's like a Jerry Springer show now. Yeah. Well, I don't get into drama. I've mentioned that before too. I've had a lot of people try to draw me into drama and get me involved in different things in the target individual community. I don't do that. I have other things to do. I try to stay as productive as possible. But we are getting close to the end of this live show, and I think we're probably going to have to end it. But I'm just looking for another comment, kind of scanning up back into the comments, see if I missed anything. And Nicholas Boserman said earlier around 10:05, if I get a pic of their face, it deletes off my phone. The file is blank. Wow. That's something that, would go along with what I was talking about with my security system. You've been hacked at that point, or just dealing with something that's weird and spiritual. Well, guys, I'd like to thank everybody for participating in the live stream. Like I said, please like and share. There's a lot of targets out there who would never find this without you sharing it with them. And, like I've asked before for prayers, I certainly appreciate that. I have, taken a couple days off here, and I can't really afford to do that. But the pain is a lot less than it was last night concerning the hernia. And prayer works, and I'd like to thank you guys for doing that. In fact, right after the show, after I asked for prayer, I started immediately feeling some relief. And I think that there's a reason why the Bible and why Christ and God encourages us to pray for each other and to be forgiving and loving and treating each other with forgiveness and mercy, as we ask our Heavenly Father to forgive us, and to pray for one another for healing. And it's just something that I do, and it's something that I'm not going to quit asking for. And I pray for you guys multiple times per day. And as people have brought up, do you think we're ever going to get justice? Do you think the stuff's ever going to come out? I guarantee it's going to come out. And our ultimate hope, of course, is in Jesus Christ. And his mercy and love, and his perfect judgments and justice that we will experience inevitably. And I'd like to thank everyone who helps support me and the channel. The link is always in the description. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.